Hi, I'm Lazaroo-hood, entrepreneur, philanthropist and family man.
This is my podcast in conversation with.
From the boardroom, back to the beginnings, to the present with my guests, talking about business, family and sport. Today we're here to meet Olia Stasiuk, and we're here in KLCC, Petronas Towers, in the middle of Malaysia. Olia is an award-winning author and the founder of Bonzai AI. Can't wait to hear her journey. Hey you, thanks for being on my podcast today. It's great in Malaysia.
Happy to be here, thanks for the invite.
Nice. Today it's going to be a Spanish Inquisition and I'm going to be not gentle, yes I am. But no really. So tell me about your background and how that's led to your business achievements to date, Olia.
It's a very good question, Ross. Well, my background, I was born in Ukraine and I was raised in a very basic family, and my parents both were pretty much educators. So my mom was teaching kids in university and my father in school. And the funniest part is, I very much remember how I was 6 years old and I came back home. I had the very famous book in Ukraine for the first graders and I slapped it on the table.
Oh. Did you get in trouble?
And I literally said it, I will never be a teacher. I only will be a teacher to put bad marks to people who learn slow.
Okay.
And so that was the beginning of my kind of educational career. The purpose behind it, I was always so fast in life, kind of just curious. I think I was just so curious about everything in life. My mom was really good about educating me. And essentially what happened, I was ahead many times. And that kind of pattern still was me. And that pattern still challenging sometimes with me. At the same time, it did ended up leading me to actually getting very, very passionate about education. And so for majority of my time, people assume that I'm not a patient person. Ended up being, I'm the most patient when it comes to education. And I've learned that during my first trip to US when I was creating hair wraps in the hair of little girls, so 5 years old. And I had to keep them still for half an hour, literally like not moving. And to be honest with you, I've never felt more in my place just by naturally connecting with them and talking about random things. And even my mom was beyond surprised about that. So one of the kind of big parts of me leading towards education, it was coincidences. So I've never planned to really study to be a teacher. I always wanted to be a developer, software developer, where my mom
Where we are now, though, so we can talk more about it, but yeah.
Yes, and I wanted to be, I wanted to work on the TV show at some point, but essentially my father said it's not a paying job. And funny enough, when I moved to Canada, things happen very quickly, and unfortunately, a wife of an owner of the store that I worked for passed away, and I had to find a job very quickly to purely be able to pay for my school. And for whatever reason, nobody wanted to give me a job at that point, except this company called in, and they're like, we have a better paying job than everyone else, but we can't tell you who is it for. You need to come for an interview. And I'm like, okay.
No prep work at all at this point?
No, and they were like, essentially, I started working for Nespresso when I did not like coffee or anything, but I just really needed a job. And I was like, thanks God they didn't ask me about that on the interview. I ended up falling in love with the coffee, but I also have been really, really good at training people. And one of the managers at Nespresso store discovered that skill in me. And it was natural. So it was just part of me. I was good at explaining people in the simple way, complex things, and they ended up developing me, and my career started there.
And the love of coffee.
On a love of coffee, yes.
My wife's exactly the same now.
Yeah, so I like derailed a little bit from your initial question, but ended up never planned to be an educator. Ended up my mom educates, my father educates, and now I educate adults pretty much through what I do, and kind of a mystery of life, right?
Well, everything leads to a path, and I'm a big believer of kismet. So I think that takes us to Bonzai AI.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about, or tell us everything about Bonzai AI. Because you know I'm a big fan, and we can talk about that in a second. But Bonzai AI is a global community and a global company, although born in Canada from Ukraine roots.
Yes, Bonzai is a story on its own because essentially, as my career was progressing very, very quickly at Nespresso, after that at different other companies, software companies, not software companies, I ended up mastering skill of building this courses and proper training programs for people from the moment they join the company to the moment they lead. That being said, there is always was something bothering me, and I ended up like hitting the same wall pretty much. And it used to take me forever to create any training content, but I also used to do the same things over and over that I didn't have to do. So essentially they would bore me. And despite like my career was flying 7 years in a row, but I ended up getting myself into burnout from being super successful. And I never even imagined that's possible until this moment when I was sitting in the meeting was like, large amount of managers from our company, and I've always been the person who's curious, who asks questions, who challenges, and I realized that I'm not doing that anymore. I'm literally just like moving every second from one position to another, and it was super weird, and I started Googling that, and then later on I ended up being removed from work very quickly. And it's funny enough, why? Because I grew up in a very, very basic family in Ukraine, and for me, it was a dream to even move to another country, not to say like, a high salary or high position. When I came to Canada, I literally said, okay, forget about these kind of jobs because you don't have English. Forget about this kind of salaries because obviously you don't have anybody to support you to get there and you're like starting everything from scratch. So I kind of caught myself short on many things. And what ended up being, I ended up later only realizing that it was my problem. But at the same time, for me, it was a goal. The very big objective in life was, okay, if I grow to this manager position and I ended up getting to the salary of 6 figures, that's literally a dream come true for any Ukrainian from a very basic family like mine. I got there at the age of 27. And in that exact moment, I asked myself, but what's now? Yep. And I also realized that I'm completely empty inside. So it was interesting to be in that moment when you can pay for the apartment in a very expensive city in North America, when you can travel anywhere you want, when you really can buy what you want, when you're the perfect age to do it, but then you're also not enjoying it because something is missing.
Empty almost.
Exactly.
I think that's the problem with it. You set, goals, as you said, to achieve, and you think that will be the pinnacle, and then you have to reassess. And I think as you're going to lead to is then you have to reset new goals.
Yeah. And it was interesting because as I went on the sick leave, I was trying to come back quickly because I'm the person who loved to work, I needed, and I was just starting to feel a bit better. And as soon as I came back, the war in Ukraine started. And as I'm Ukrainian, I grew up in Ukraine, my entire family Ukrainian, that was the moment of a complete life change to me. That was something that I've never expected to live through. And for me, my life ended at that point. That exact night when I've seen Eyes of My Father, world changed for me. And it's interesting because so many things became unnecessary, not interesting, not relevant. And I've asked myself only one question. I was like, you have one life. What are you doing with it? What exactly are you doing with your life? And that was the beginning of a discovery that led to Bonzai AI. And one of the questions that I've asked myself, can you help more than one company every 3 years instead of just moving, from a company to another, fixing it and then leaving to the next one? Yep. Can you make it faster? And also during that time, I was lucky enough to explore AI. And I'll never forget how I was sitting in my apartment in Montreal at that time. Very late night, I just brought my parents from Ukraine and they fell asleep and I had time to myself, like that rare peaceful time that we all value so much with age. And essentially, I tried ChatGPT the first time and I typed in the things that I was so proud of. Like I spent 10 years on building some things, learning things, and then I type it in ChatGPT and I looked at the result and I was blown away. And I was literally sitting in silence in my dark room with a lamp turned on and I had a beautiful golden mirror on the right side. I looked in the mirror and I just pretty much said to myself without words, I was like, who are you kidding? Like, this is the future. And you have two ways from here. You can pretend this doesn't exist, or you can really, as scary as it is, jump on it, learn it, and see how you can optimize that and live with it. The beauty of it, though, I personally mentioned to you that I've always been super fast, right? Yeah. So, and my whole life, it felt like everything around me not fast enough. So it felt like even the jobs, I would move sometimes because it was like too slow, processes too slow. Even in relationships, unfortunately, the same pattern happened with me, right? So I would just move faster. And that being said, from the day I got into AI, I never, it's already probably a third year now, I never felt that something too slow. I always feel like I'm catching up. I'm never bored, and I really feel like I'm finally in my pace.
You're in your lane. Been a runner.
Yes.
I totally get that. Because it is, unfortunately, I'm the same. I think it's down to my dyslexia, is that I overly think, but I need to have variety. I suppose that's why my kind of diverse portfolio, but it is the fact that you are dealing with multiple industries, but with technology that is constantly, almost daily, innovating, and you're bringing this to people, yeah, which is amazing. So tell me about your childhood and how that influenced your greatest and your other business achievements.
It's a very complex question, and I think it's interesting because as I'm a woman, right, a lot of things that shaped me are more typical for boys versus girls. And so what was interesting, I was always growing up, for whatever reason, in the area where I lived, always were just like guys, and I would never play dolls.
Tomboy?
Yeah, well, I would never play dolls. I would always climb the trees. I would climb on some factories and hide in the wheels. Don't tell that my parents. But I kind of always was this sort of monkey, right? Which later on I realized I am a monkey by a Chinese zodiac, so that kind of explains it. That being said, the curiosity always was in place. My parents were really, really good on keeping me busy. So from a super early age, I started doing dancing, more like Ukrainian folk dancing, and then gymnastic, and then swimming. And so my day was super packed, right? From very early morning school, then after school, I would be busy until 11 p.m. When I was a kid, it kind of felt really intense, and probably I didn't appreciate it as much, but now I definitely see so many benefits out of it. And within that, I also managed to learn Russian language on my own just by reading the books.
I didn't know you knew Russian too.
Yeah, and so it's kind of unfortunate now as the topic of...
yeah, we bypass that at the minute.
Yeah. At the same time, what I've learned, it's like when kids are at about 5 years old, they do not understand what's right, what's wrong, what you're supposed to have. They're really open to the world. And so at that age, my parents really kept me busy, which resulted later in kind of the same busyness, but also curiosity. That being said, I'm the only child. And my father, he actually played in a junior soccer team of Ukraine. He was just about to become the player in Dynamo Kiev, and he got injured. And very bad injury, unfortunately, injury after which you finish your professional career. And so since that day, my father always been dreaming for Olympic champion son. And he only had a daughter. So I always grew up with this, like,
an amazing award-winning daughter.
Yes, yes. So for me, I grew up in this battle of trying to prove my father that I'm worthy and I'm better, right, than the son. And I have to say that shaped a big portion of my life. So until about 30 years old, consciously or unconsciously, I've been really working to prove my father that I deserve
praise, I suppose?
I guess, yes. And as sad as it could sound, I still will be forever grateful to my father for being sometimes too hard on me as a girl, as a daughter, right? Sometimes not saying those good words to encourage me, even though he would say it to all other people about me. But that being said, it really shaped me being very strong and really dedicated and keep working even when I fail. When I used to get medals for like gymnastics or any other competitions, my father, like, so if you have not a first place, it doesn't count.
Yep.
It's like you're not first, no praise, no nothing. And so there's always was like, you have to be the first. And, at some point in my life, I actually asked, is that actually works against me, because you not always have to be the first everywhere, but gladly I can understand where my path is and where not. That being said, I always grew up in the Olympic mode champion, Olympic champion mode. And good or not, it definitely helped me out in my career. I definitely have been very dedicated, hardworking, so that's for sure shaped me big time. It probably gave a downside on the personal life, right? Because strong women, it's hard to figure it out what to do with them. That being said, I would not change anything in my life. I'm so happy exactly about what I went through, because it made me who I am. And at one point in my life, I did ask God to make me stronger or be ready for what's coming. And no matter what happened, I would say I'm in a very good place, and I'm grateful for everybody on this journey, and I've learned from every lesson.
Well, touch wood. And I think it's something, a bit like me, the encouragement and the competitiveness in life, unfortunately, needs to be pushed through in kids, because this sort of giving a medal out just because you come last doesn't help you when you actually go out to work. Yeah. Because realistically, kids need to know that life is hard. But I get the same as you, that and my family side, that sometimes maybe a bit extra cuddles might have helped a little bit more. But I am still grateful, like you. I wouldn't be here today without everything that happened and the way my parents were, which is the same for you. And I suppose that leads neatly into my next question. It's gentle, but anyway, that's fine. Is what drives you as a person?
I think there is a few different angles to answering that question. The first one that I've learned about myself, there is something magical happens to the point of shivers and the full fulfillment when I see people who are struggling with something, and I'm able to help them through the training, through the information, through coaching, through sitting there with them 8 hours until they really get that answer to that question. And when they have that light bulb in their eyes and in their head that they understood something, or even more, what happened to me, sometimes coming back 7 years later and saying, remember that training you did? It changed my life. And to me, that's massive driver to everything that I do when it comes to Bonzai and to how I want to bring value to the world. And I think on another side, what I've realized through this journey, I've learned how we as humans can do better education, but also what mistakes we do, especially when it comes to kids. And one of the things, it was really hard for me to, at some point, to handle war in Ukraine. And my father one day told me this thing. He said, you cannot save everyone. You have to choose who you go in to save. And in that moment, I realized that I'm just in the beginning of my business journey too, and I couldn't send tons of money. And if I will send, $100 here, $100 there, they're not going to even save much, right?
Still a lot to do. It's amazing that you're doing that for your parents, because that, sings to my heart.
Yes, and so what I've asked myself in that moment, if you could save one person or one group of people, who would that be? And I realized that a big issue right now is when Ukrainian people have to move abroad, and even if they're super smart, talented, hardworking, the biggest problem is English, that was never really well done in our schools. And I realized it's not only in Ukraine, but in so many third world countries, right, where kids, talented, amazing, incredible geniuses, and they're locked because of this poor beginning educational system. And so what drives me long term is to really be able to influence that and shape that and personally help those kids, and starting in Ukraine and expanding to other countries as I get more and more experience.
Oh, I think that's splendid, to be honest with you. And the fact that, again, it keeps pulling back to that learning. And, with Bonzai, I can say, I'm really chuffed that you allowed me to invest, because not only was it your passion, it was also the story, the innovation of Bonzai, and then, for me, it's always about purpose, and the fact that you are trying to help employees, employers, and now that you are bringing, I suppose, a package that through Bonzai AI that helps training internally, externally, that can actually be multilingual. You can literally have, which is the new product coming out, which you can talk about, I know a lot of talking here, aren't I? Is that the virtual video avatar that can be anybody on the planet who can then speak in pretty much any language.
Yes. Yes, it's incredible what innovations can do. And I think one of the great suggestions I'll give anybody who's looking to open their business, we often lock ourselves into a question mindset, can I do this? And I very well remember when I realized kind of how AI works, and I came to my first chief technology officer, and I didn't ask, can you do this? I said, we need to do this. And even though I heard, I heard back, I was like, are you crazy? And I was like, yes, I probably am, but we need to do this.
Crazy's good though.
Crazy's good, yes. And we did it. And the purpose why I'm saying this, it's like, when you open to something completely new, that's when you're able to create something completely new. And 2.5 years ago, nobody thought that we would be able to create a video-based training course in 15 minutes. By now, nobody still believes me, even if they believe me until they see it. Yes, you did. Usually I have like exact same thing. People are like, that sounds cool. And then they see a demo and they're like, who did this video? And I'm like, that's exactly what I told you about. And so now we can do that. Translation of videos was impossible. Now it's like easy to do. You're saving tons of money. But more than that, when you're able to create so quickly, now the question is, how are you planning to scale and still keep personalization? And that's avatars. And funny enough, like 3 years ago, I saw the first avatars. They were so bad, people were scared of them. Now they're beyond realistic. Everybody who sees my video and my avatar, they literally don't believe me because they think that it's me because it looks identical like I did the training. And it's massive power behind that we, like 2 years ago, we never imagined it, right? And now just think of it for a second. If we can implement it in the courses that like you can be sleeping in your bed, but somebody can be watching it and feeling like they're interacting with you in the real moment.
Personability that you're delivering, that we're all talking about, human nature and human contact, is and has been now delivered from tech. Isn't that odd? But it's amazing that now we are moving to such a fast world, and you said it quite rightly, you can build this in 15 minutes through Bonzai AI. That's incredible. And everyone cares about their time now.
Yeah.
So I think also, like you were kind of insinuating earlier, it also helps mental health. Because again, you can have that work-life balance. Instead of spending hours and hours doing video content, Bonzai AI can do that for you.
Totally. I think one of my most epic experiences to date, I was just on the flight last month back from conference in Barcelona, and I created my very first course with Bonzai on the plane in the air by literally sitting in the chair on the plane, but having my avatar delivering perfect video training, right? And it's just mind-blowing how it changes your life. But also what I love a lot, I realized last year that small business owners had such a disadvantage before because even if those technologies have been available, the costs behind them, the way the pricing models were, small business owners could not afford it. And in fact, they needed the most because they kind of wearing all of these hats. And so this year now we've expanded our offering and we finally able to support small business owner at such a low cost in a way that for them, it's like breathing. It's a new air, fresh air, while they can develop their business on other angles.
Powerful tool to keep them up with the big boys.
Exactly.
And I think that's one thing that grabbed me when I looked at your pitch deck. I just thought it's just giving the tools for everybody to be on almost a level playing field. So this wasn't in the questions, so it's not being gentle, but you've just hit the nail on the head. It's the fact that you're not just Bonzai AI. You are an award-winning author of 66 Days, Success Formula, 15 plus half marathons, and as I kind of hinted earlier on, an energy junkie.
Yes.
So tell me about the fact is, what came about the book, which is freely available. You can punt here, by the way, you can sell the book.
I don't get commission. Go on.
So book came very unexpectedly because I never thought I'm good in writing, because that's what my teacher in school once told me. There is another story about it. Interesting enough, many years, 7 years in a row, people were telling me, you need to write a book about your stories. You had so many. But it came from so many different people, and it came sometimes about work life, sometimes about personal, sometimes about, immigrant life. And I always felt like there is no one book in which I can fit it together as a story, and then if I don't, then it's not gonna be me. It's gonna be just portion of it. Funny enough, a lot of things happened simultaneously as I was kind of searching for myself and looking exactly what Bonzai AI is, because at some point it was not a determined idea, it was just a search. When I realized what I'm doing and the empire I'm building, I was at the very down moment in my life in terms of my willpower. And I was really upset at myself at some point. But also, I just read a book that people suggested me for many years, 5 a.m. Club. So Robin Sharma, there is a lot in that book, and I really like it because I'm a 5 a.m. person. I became one.
Not naturally.
Not naturally. I used to hate it when my father used to wake me up for running. Funny enough...
I won't say the fact we're on a running track, by the way. Yeah.
Yes. Love running. And essentially what I did in that moment, I read in the book that, there is a theory that do something for 21 days and you're gonna get a habit developed.
That's right. Or break the habit.
Or break the
Same
habit.
Thing. Yeah.
So essentially, it's not a real research. So the real research was done by College of London, and basically it says that on average, people need about 66 days to develop a habit with the right circumstances, and it could take anywhere between 19 to 268 days, but average is 66 days, in fact. And so to me, I knew that 21 day is not a thing for me because it never worked. I always thought of my friends. I was curious why. Apparently, 21 day, it was initially introduced by plastic surgeons, and the message was that whenever you do a big change to your body, it would take you about 21 days looking at the mirror to start getting used to yourself. And then the smart marketers picked it up for other angles, and that's how we know it.
Right, okay.
The true research.
You shoehorned it in.
Exactly. And so I decided to test the 66-day research on myself. And I decided to commit to 66 days in a row doing things that I hate, or things that I absolutely did not know how to properly do, or people said you cannot do them every single day. And that ended up being running, abs, squats, so 5 different exercises, and then some of the choices that I did around food, right? Like obviously healthy food, waking up at 5 a.m. And the goal was to do it absolutely every single day. And I said to myself, if you cannot do this, you do not deserve the empire that you're building. That was my commitment at the moment when I could not even handle 5-day diet. Interesting enough, I was so serious with myself, and those 66 days were absolutely mind-blowing. And what's interesting, it says in the book, the first 22 days are hard. The second are challenging. The third one are gorgeous. And essentially, it's true, because essentially in the beginning, everything you do is hard. Later, it's challenging because you're starting to change. So the new habit's starting to kick in, but the old one don't know what to do. The last part, you're a new person. And as I was running and as I was doing it, I realized one thing. When I'm running, my thoughts get much more clear. And usually it goes around the same topic on one day, and you just go through multiple situations that you've experienced, but then they all get together into a clear understanding of what actually happened. And so 66-day formula was born on day 8. I started writing the book and just taking notes of what I was thinking about, and it all connected into 3 major parts. The first one is we need to challenge our body, we need to challenge our brain, and we need to challenge limits that people put in our head from the childhood. And that's kind of how you can become a superhuman and achieve success in any area you decide for yourself in 66 days. Because again, success means so many things, and you can concentrate on one thing for 66 days, and you'll be surprised what it's gonna come out to.
Well, an award-winning author and founder of Bonzai AI. think you're doing okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're doing great. So, my final question for today, other than quickfire, is, so I think this is a hard one for some people to get in our modern world, but I still think it has context, and that is, how do you see and how do you envision as a female founder in the AI tech world?
This is a very tricky one. Since I've entered this space, there have been a lot of different concepts that I had to hear and test, I would say. And sometimes I say there is a lot of noise and not a lot of results. And a lot of times you would hear things like, female do not get supported as much, or there is no space for females in tech. You know, I've been going through that and also asking myself, is that actually true? And I think at one point when you're in the middle between people who talk about it, you feel that it's true. But then when you step aside and you look actually what those people do, right? How they behave, how they actually consistent with their results, you understand that sometimes there is a lot of talk without a reason, right? And so what I try to do for myself the most in life right now, in any area of my life, is to really step back a lot. I like to say it, I need silence time, and silence time to really process what I heard and what I see, because that's two different things. And what I've learned that you absolutely can be shocked by the results you can achieve if you stay open-minded. And my best example to date, when I started fundraising, I always said, I'm gonna have investors from US and Canada. Nobody else probably will not understand. None of my investors from US and Canada, but somehow from Europe, UK, Ireland, right? Spain, and it keeps happening, and I keep getting investors interested who are not from US. But that being said, I had to be open to it at one point, and I had to have that conversation. And funny enough, many investors who we were close to sign, I'm happy we didn't, because it ended up being not the people for Bonzai. And I think that's where it comes to a very important point. Even if you're female in tech, even if you hearing things like it's not a good space, you're just talking to the wrong people. First of all, you have to move yourself from the wrong people. Second, you have to really work on the results, because nobody just like gives money or buys the product without really knowing what it is or making sure that it's bringing value. And if you really follow the key value points in life, right? Like, choose the product that really solves the issues. Be real about who you are and carry that through your product. And then search for people who understand you and sharing you, and also lead by example in my case, right? You will definitely find it, and it doesn't matter if you're young, female, immigrant, or anything else. And that's my personal problems I had to overcome to understand that I'm at the right space, I'm doing the right thing, and there is the right people around me, as long as I allow them to enter my life, and as long as I'm also committing to them being in my life.
So this is the hard part, as I always say, or the daft, because I'm a bit of an idiot. Quick fire. So, 3 inspirational heroes.
Ooh, the tough one right at the beginning. I have to say, you know, when people always ask if you have heroes in your life, or somebody you would want to meet in your past or future life, who would that be? I thought on that question often, and the answer is no one really. And the reason for that is because even if it's a big star in the world, I feel like they're just human. In the end of the day, they're just human. They're people who worked so hard, and all I admire typically, it's hard work, pure heart, and really the result that speaks without the words. And that being said, if I really go down to the nitty-gritty, like if I have to pick someone, I probably would, you know what, I actually would pick my mom. And as much as my mom right now, she's always been an example of beauty, right? So the strong person in my family is my father. So my character is definitely from my father, the way I look like from my mother. So I usually always said my mom is very feminine, But why I would call her my hero right now, because at the age of 56, she moved to a new country and she literally learning English right now, and she just passed her first test and she finished
Go,
her
Mom.
incredible result. And I literally was crying when I was reading what she wrote, because it took me 12 years to get to that level of English that she got in the last few months. And she's the person who did not believe in herself whatsoever. So I definitely can call her a hero for that.
And you're her cheerleader as well.
I am, yes.
I'm quite similar. My mum, she is the determination in my life, and she gave me the grit to get to where I am, so quite similar. 3 steps to success.
Ooh, try. Have to try. There is nothing happening without trying. Learn as much as you can, even through failures, and stand up again and start over again.
You learn from falling.
Yeah.
Exactly it. I love that, and I think I'll add one in, even though it's not my question. Is I heard this. I watched this a couple of months ago in Shark Tank, that as a founder, that it isn't a option, it is a necessity as a founder, and it should be. The fact that you're maybe looking at each paycheck, each invoice to basically succeed and grow, and that's where you learn, try, and then drive and learn from falling. Because if it's just an option, you're never going to strive and achieve anything. And so I think that encapsulates. And what about 3 foods?
3 foods.
Come on, we're out in the middle.
Okay, so this is so bad because I'm probably the biggest fan of Italian food. At the same time, it's like the worst food for me ever. So exactly, my number 1 is pizza, which is total treat that
What sort of pizza though? Are we going down Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
I'm all kinds. I'm
okay.
like literally, pizza is just a thing.
Pineapple?
I could be a pineapple girl for sure.
One of my sons adores it. Mateo loves pineapple. I go, no, your granny loves it. Pineapple shouldn't be on pizza.
So at this point, we lost half of the guys who wanted to become my husband. So, but that's true. I can eat pizza with pineapple. Truffles, mushrooms, seafood is really good too, right? But the classic ones like a margarita. So any kind of pizza, yeah, any kind of pizza.
And then spaghettis and
No,
pasta.
actually, spaghetti, I'm really good with that. As much as it sounds good, I didn't find the one that is so good except my lasagna that I cook. So that's for friends and family. But my number 2 would be tiramisu. So tiramisu is like a sin for me. And I just learned that there is a 101 tiramisu place in Rome. So now I need to go back to it.
That sounds epic. Tiramisu is one of my absolute go-to, and you have to make or try the limoncello tiramisu.
Interesting.
And if you like lemon,
Yeah.
it's to die for.
Okay.
It is really good. And
Cool.
I'll just give you a different kind of twist on it. And that kind of leads in, you're saying Rome. 3 holiday destinations.
The ones that I loved.
Or not liked.
Or
happy for you
not.
to do either.
I think if I would highlight trips that really became very memorable recently, one is definitely Bahamas. And I think I did it for my birthday in the very special time for me, right after the release of the book. And it was a new chapter. And I think what Bahamas brought to me, it's being on the boat in the moment where everyone is even on that boat. There is no money, no nothing. But then seeing what nature did and like being able to witness with my eyes the beauty of the world that nature's created, and just thinking how lucky I am to live in that world, that was something out of nowhere that I cannot forget. That's definitely memorable. I did so many trips that it's hard to choose.
You travel the world, and I know you do, conferences galore.
I did, yes. I think I can highlight places on different sites. There is places where it comes to business destinations, and there is places that comes for soul destinations. I think I really much remember my trip to Thailand as well, when I was in Phuket. And I was supposed to go to my birthday to Bali, but then many things happened and I didn't get on my flight. And you know, people say universe has its own plan. And I had to book last minute a whole different place that I booked in the middle between locals, not where the tourists are, and there was no connection, no nothing. But what it gave me, like I was there for 2 weeks just on my own, and I was searching for the answers. And I was searching for one answers, but I got other answers. And one of the most beautiful things that happened to me at that moment is running between the locals every single morning. And it started with dogs barking at me. It started with them clearly knowing that I'm weirdo. I'm not from here, obviously in my Nikes with my long nails, you know. Clearly I'm not local and I have money, right, at that time compared to what they've had. But the beauty of it was they were not looking to get anything out of me. They were literally every morning greeting me. By the end of 2 weeks, I started running with their dogs behind me. And I had fear of dogs, so it helped me to fight my fear of the dogs. But it's also every morning they would smile and just wave at me, sitting at literally the house that you cannot even call house. But they were happy just by being where they are. And it really made me appreciate the other parts of the world, the people, and seeing the simplicity in the different angle. Yeah. And each time now when I think of the phrase, stop to smell the roses, to me it's really that place in Thailand, because the amount of beautiful flowers I've seen in the world on those runs, by really just taking the time, it was incredible. Yeah. So that's number 2. And number 3, what can I highlight? I think I would, as much as for work, I would highlight different cities, but for life, I would highlight Bali right now, because Bali came to me as a surprise. I did not, when I want to come to Bali, it didn't happen. When I didn't want to, do it, it happened. And then when I arrived at first, I hated it. I hated it for, I hated it for the way, how dirty it was. I hated it for, I'll be honest, for a lot of Russian language around. I hated it also for the type of people surrounding me in a particular area. But then I also realized, so when you spend the time in Bali, you realize that they're a very different way of living in Bali, and you need to find your crowd. And so when I found my crowd of entrepreneurs, of international people, of really people talking about meaningful life and really how they develop and how they grow, the books and stuff, I fell in love with it, and to the point that I came back specifically for that feeling. And what I've learned about myself in Bali, you come in, at first you also might hate it because you see all this absolutely gorgeous people around you, which is Bali famous for, right? And it's true. And at some point you feel like, oh my God, I need so much to grow up. But that's exactly what people say. Whenever in business you feel that you, the most smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's exactly what I felt in Bali. When I came, it felt so challenging, but it's also set me the new level of how I can evolve as a person, not only in the way I look, but also what I eat, how I spend my days, how I treat myself. And I did notice how big of a difference it creates in my life when I now go from Bali to different parts of the world. So I can, funny enough, people probably would highlight it for the nature, but I would highlight for personal growth you can get there.
I think that's fantastic. And 3 ambitions.
Ooh, my ambitions.
You got the whole life in front of you, but I know it's a hard one.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. At some point of my life, I thought that there is so many things I cannot achieve, right? Because again, too young, female, tech, no English as a first language. And then the the coolest thing that I think happened in my life over the last 3 years, I've been fighting my fears one after another, after another, after another, after another. And at this point of my life, I realized that I achieved so much already that I've never planned to achieve, that at this point, it's almost fascinating to see what else I can achieve. So it's almost another mountain after another, but not because I needed it. It's because I realized that we as humans are so limitless, and I'm curious to see what's there for me. So I think the only ambition is to not be stopped by what people say and keep challenging to see where you can get. And it could be anything like art. I started writing another book under a nickname.
And so
You
it's
got to tell me more later.
it's
No
a very
spoilers.
different, it's a secret one. It's a very different type and way of writing, but it's a challenge for myself to see, can I actually produce that? I'm also started doing a lot of different activities like on top of my adrenaline, right? Skydiving, bungee jumping. I'm always trying to learn something new. So I want to do a pottery class next week. And so I'm trying to see those things because you only know as much as you've tried, right?
That's it. And you never know what you're going to like either.
Exactly. So the ambition is to really explore and find in the world more and more things that fits me, but also be able to say, hey, I did this just for the sake of trying it, you know, and see where it could lead.
Yeah, like I'm learning the banjo at the minute, poorly. Hopefully I'll be all right maybe in a year's time. But again, it's just challenging. I can't believe you've got to tell me more about this book. That's a different one. 3 ways that you try and relax. Because obviously, we're all these days about, thankfully, mental health. And we need to be all about mental well-being. Mm-hmm. So how do you take 3 ways to try and relax and give yourself me time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never valued how important it is in my life until recent few years. And now it's beyond important. And one of the things that I do, I wake up at 5 in the morning usually, not because I just love waking up early. It's really the time when I can have the most peace and silence and do the workout and basically not talk for quite some time. So I'm trying to really utilize my mornings. And if I do that well, my day is really, as they say, starts as the hero day, and I can see that. So silence is a big time. I'm really badly trying to arrange for myself a silent retreat. Usually those get booked like a year in advance.
That's
so
right.
I did not know that. So I'm working on that. Books became a very big step back for me from the reality. So reading a book in some nice nature place. Running. Running is definitely interesting enough as my medicine in different ways, including when I feel overwhelmed or too busy. It's taking the time to run. Helps to structure, helps to do better choices, helps to make right decisions, find new ideas. But it's also the time when I have away from everyone else.
That's going to mean something. I recommend, unless you've already tried it, for me, running's 1, but 2 is scuba diving.
Oh, cool.
Because when you're under that water, you can't hear anything. It's just you, your buddy, and obviously your watch that gives you your depth that you're allowed. But it's the most silent, peaceful place I've ever found in my whole life. I love that. And 3 cities that you love or like to work.
That's a good one. I think for the last 12 years, people would ask me, where's your home? Interesting. I never could answer anything. Like I always would say, oh, I'm just like all around the world. And I still say that. 3 years ago, when I was going through the burnout and searching the answers for the company, I also asked myself, where would you actually live, right? Because a lot of things happen because of immigration, parents, family. But then I never felt that Canada is necessarily my home. So I'm Ukrainian by birth, I'm Canadian by choice. I appreciate Canada a lot, but I never felt like it's forever a place to live. And when I was traveling around the world, I was really coming to every city and saying, okay, I like you as a tourist, but would I live here? And it's interesting because, funny enough, in the end of the trip, I came out with 3 cities, 3 exact cities that I wrote for myself that I would love to live in between for the next few years.
Yeah.
First one was New York. And New York came by surprise because I used to hate New York for 10 years. Why? Because I did not know how to exactly live in New York. So when the dots came together and you just realize that kind of what mindset you're supposed to have, how you're supposed to work, where to live, how much money you're supposed to make, New York became really, for me right now, probably the most exciting city because I have enough energy, the right mindset, the right way of working for New York. And so I feel like it's also a great place to catch anybody you want.
24 hours.
Exactly.
That's the thing about New York.
Yes, it's very tiring. A lot of people cannot understand it, but that's also how I am. And so it's really matching my personality that way. I think another part about New York, there is nothing more beautiful for me that in the end of the crazy busy day,
come back home and have like a glass of wine with the book next to the fireplace with my jazz music, but seeing the skyline of the most powerful city in the world. And I think a lot of people love to watch the water. I love to watch the power of the night city lights. And to me, New York has the most gorgeous skyline I've seen to date. So that's kind of New York. The second and third, funny enough, will somehow interconnect. And the second one was Singapore. I fell in love with Singapore when I came randomly on the trip here. I fell in love in Singapore, with Singapore, and there was all kinds of things together, but it ended up being the same. I felt challenged enough in business. I felt that the future of tech is coming to Singapore. I absolutely love the mindset and how smart people in the city already there, because a lot of expats there, but also the way the Singapore government develops the country and that it's also English speaking. So Singapore broke a lot of my limits when it came to understanding the country, because you come at one point, it's like a completely Asian country, but then everybody speaks perfect English, and then the value and the money and the services and the salaries, it's all North American level. And then education in the country government develops Singapore in the way that you would develop your own business, especially when it comes to education, and I'm in education. So to me, it was like, I do really see myself being here 4 months per year. The third one would be surprising for many people at first. The third one was Zurich in Switzerland. And a lot of people were like,
interesting.
Why
I'm going
Zurich?
to Switzerland this summer, so I'm intrigued by this.
Yeah, and I did not expect that. But when I got to Zurich during the same trip, I realized that it was most pleasant to my eyes scenery when I looked at people in the city. So it was like, first of all, Zurich is very business-oriented city. You would see absolutely stunning people dressed in suits, and I'm a big fan of suits. I feel like it really represents you. It's really how I grew up, right? And I found there is also a lot of people, good-looking people. So good-looking people, business-oriented people. And Zurich became the third city for me where I actually found being challenged when it came to, I was thinking when I was paying my bills, because all three cities ended up being quite expensive, and as Canadian you kind of feel comfortable in most cities in the world, but those three on that trip were challenging for me. And I realized something about myself. I don't like to be where I'm not challenged, and so I've selected all three cities that showed me that I can grow there. Funny enough, the next year all three cities were named the most expensive cities in the world. Those three cities. So you kind of now see my vibe even more, and that's the cities that I picked for life for now.
I can empathize, because for me, leaving Ireland to go to London, and I've been in London for nearly 30 years, that I thought London had to be my home, but I realized that it wasn't. My home is the island of Ireland and Malaysia. England was a stopgap for me for work and for education. It was never home. And where my heart is the island of Ireland and Malaysia, because it just suits me. But you need to go to Dublin and Belfast. You have to give them a go. I don't know if they compete with New York and such, but they have their charm, so we'll get you over. And awesome. You never know, you might meet an Irishman at some point too.
You never know. Never say never.
Last question before I forget, because I nearly forget this one, is how many hours a day do you work?
Not a lot of people like to hear that I work a lot of hours, because they say you need to find time for yourself. It's interesting, because I always say what I do I actually love so much, so it doesn't always feel like I'm working. But I have to say probably my breaking point was recently when I came back from the trip, with all of the jet lags and working with people on 3 different time zones, because we work with people in Europe, North America, and Asia. The last working day was 22 hours. So 2 a.m. because of the jet lag was the wake up, and then it was nonstop until 12 midnight with all of the other meetings. That being said, mindfully, I'm trying not to work more than 10 to 12 hours. The objective is to manage to work 4 hours a day, to be able to have the right team in place to cover the other parts, right? Because a lot of things can be automated. So Still working on that.
Well, Bonzai AI, I hear, is a good tool for that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you for that. So tell me about your next destination and next conference.
Oh, I'm absolutely excited about this one. We're going back to New York City Tech Week, and last year we had massive success there. Unexpectedly, Bonzai won pitch competition. We won $20,000 for multiple services, and we also ended up leaving with the words, Olia, you made us believe in what you believe. So I really hope even for greater success this year.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for coming onto my podcast, spending the day with me in Malaysia and in Kuala Lumpur. It has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and see you all in New York.